Hello and welcome back to the House of Rugby podcast. I am Hugh Woozencroft alongside Alex Goode and Rachael Burford. Rach has had a little bit of a knock on the snors. How you feeling?
Yeah, not too bad, thank you. Gone most of my career without breaking my nose, and then first game back this weekend managed to do that.
At least you got the W against Loughborough though, so congratulations for that. Alex, how are you feeling? Feeling good?
Yep, feeling great. Obviously, my heart goes out.
You sound it.
Yeah, good. Yeah, it's just the cold that goes around in the house for the last 2 months with a child. But yeah, I haven't broken my nose, so that is a plus side. So I feel for you.
That is a positive. Yes.
You're winning.
That is a positive. Okay, all right, let's get started then. We'll be hearing from Springbok royalty shortly in the shape of the former South Africa captain John Smit, talking about the defending champions' progress ahead of that World Cup and the implications of that victory over England at Twickenham on Saturday. We're going to get our red markers out and write our report cards from the entire Autumn Nation series. We're going to give our teams a grade A to F, as of course they set their sights on that World Cup next year in France. We'll also have Pass It On, of course, another grassroots hero for us to give credit to, if you like. And we'll also have your questions for Ask Alex as well. Before we get into the podcast, we have to start with some very, very sad news, of course. The great man himself, Doddie Weir, sadly passing away at the age of 52. He'd, of course, had motor neurones disease for the past 6 years, but did so much to raise awareness off the field. And it was just so sad, of course, to get this news because he was such a big, charismatic character in our sport, but also, of course, just a wonderful person. And all of our condolences go out to everyone at Scottish Rugby, of course, his family and friends as well. Alex, Rachael, do you have some words on the great man, Al?
Yeah, I just think, all the clips you see of him, he was an extremely funny man. He was so well loved, and what he's done on the field, but then off the field, fighting for MND, raising so much money is incredible. His fighting spirit was unbelievable. You can't hear anyone say a bad word about him. He's a remarkable man who gave so much to Scottish Rugby and to the charity. And our heart goes out to him and his family.
I think the reaction that we've seen, he's clearly had an impact on so many lives and people, and the sheer fact that he dedicated, his final years, moments to raising awareness for, something that ultimately was never going to help him in his days. And I think that just kind of sums up the kind of man that he is, and he certainly will be sorely missed.
Absolutely, he will. Some of your messages on social media, this from Gus and Chloe, says a giant of a man in every sense, absolutely gutted. And this from 6 Mile Images, you'll be greatly missed, a wonderful human, rest in peace. And it was so emotional as the news was announced at Twickenham at the weekend. I guess a positive, a great thing to see, but the man deserved it. The round of applause from all of those England fans. He had so many great games in front of them in a Scotland shirt as well. And yes, of course, I have to reiterate, he will be sorely missed by everyone in our sport. But I do want to move to events next at Twickenham this weekend. England taking on South Africa. It was another defeat in the Autumn Nation series. They lost it 13 points to 27. The forwards, let's start there, shall we, Alex? Outplayed, outpowered by the Springbok pack. Even a man down as well. What does it say about where we're heading?
I think it was it's an extremely tough day for any English fan and any English player. You never want to lose at home, and you certainly don't want to lose it in that manner. Yes, South Africa are a very, very good side. They know exactly how they're going to play, but I guess it'd be disappointing for everyone involved. Disappointing, I think, as a fan. That England didn't really throw any punches. They seemed to be out-muscled, out-thought, and certainly tactically, South Africa were right on it. And you know what South Africa are going to bring. It's not that subtle, and yet England seemed to be a bit lost, really. And then when they did start to attack towards the end, it was too late, and it just looked very clunky. And no cohesion there at all. So, look, it was a very disappointing day, as I said, and not one for English rugby fans.
Rachael, how do you react to the performance?
Yeah, I think definitely disappointed. I think you can't get into a game when your set piece isn't functioning. 43% success for scrums doesn't give you a platform. Same with the line out, doesn't give you a platform to play from. And, all credit to South Africa. They absolutely suffocated England at every moment, at every opportunity, whether the ball was in the air or in the set piece area. It was a really dominant performance by them. And then Alex said, it's almost like when it's almost got nothing to lose, now we start to play with a bit of attack and a bit of flair. And it's just, I think Johnny May touched the ball once, and that was a ball that was at his toes. And it's like, how do we create better opportunities? And they just lost the collision battle. There was no real gain line carries, which then allows for the attack to play and thrive off. And I think Alex summed it up with, we just didn't fire any shots, especially in that first half. Really real lack of possession doesn't help, obviously, but then to try and get any momentum and any gain line success to then play off, it just was non-existent. And like Alex said as well, it was almost like they didn't know what to do or where to go. So there was effort. Like, you can't fault the effort. They really did try and work hard, but it was like they didn't have a plan to try and overtake what the South African side can produce.
I think on that, for me, again, the players, they're giving everything. Of course, they're proud. They want to do well. No one's ever doubted that. I guess for me, the World Cup final, we saw glimpses of England trying to go around the sort of blitz defence, South Africa flying off the line, and they were close. They didn't quite get it. And I thought they may have taken lessons from that, and yet the same things were happening. South Africans fly up, and we just weren't clever enough or having a depth and get the pass away, and people were in front of each other. And I think that, on top of the fact that this is the 5th week together, so they're a week before the camp, 4th game, I felt as if we would see a more improved performance. There would be a bit more cohesion there, as I talk about understanding, and we just didn't see that. And that's what was disappointing. We haven't built through this autumn. It sort of fizzled out at the end, which is a shame.
Eddie Jones said the result was entirely his fault. Rachael, how much blame do you think he should take for this England performance?
Well, ultimately, he's the man at the top. He's responsible for selection. He'll be responsible. Obviously, there'll be other people involved in that, but he has the final say in it. And I think it's interesting when he said that, because it was, where does he think he failed? Was it in his selection? Did he select the right team to be able to go out there? He talked massively about having to win the aerial battle. Did he select the right back three for that? And I think, or is it how we approach that game? Should we have played the way that Alex just spoke about, the way that they went out against New Zealand, which we hoped they would try and do like last week against the All Blacks? So it's interesting to try and get into that question with Eddie. Well, where actually do you see the failings in what you're saying?
We're going to be giving out our scorecard report to England in a few moments' time. So I'm going to hold fire on the RFU review, because I think our review will feed into what we want to happen there. So let's quickly move on, although there should be a mention for the fans in particular, because they were really disappointed. Nathan Healy-Potter messaged us. He said, worst I've seen England play for a long time, outclassed and beaten up. And Sean Jordan says, the Boks are just peaking, but England are still a good side. I think for Eddie Jones, some of the words that he says afterwards, you almost think he doesn't get it. England fans pay a lot of money to go to Twickenham, and it isn't always all about the World Cup. It is about that game, and then maybe getting a bit of entertainment back, and even a victory, who knows, for what they've paid for. I know nothing's promised in sport, but I think England rugby at Twickenham, there has to be a minimum level. Not necessarily sure we've hit that during this autumn, but we'll come to that a little bit more. Let's talk about Wales against Australia, because Wales needed a response after one of the worst defeats in their history, if you like, and they looked like they'd got it for Wayne Pivac, but 21-point comeback for Australia late on was a remarkable turnaround, and it puts him in a very difficult position as well. Rach, what did you make of Wales this weekend?
I really feel for them. Like for 60 minutes of that game, they had full control, but they couldn't take that last 20. I think Australia, I think it's McDermott came on, and I think he really exposed and kind of sped up the tempo, and Wales just couldn't deal with it, and they couldn't try and stop that momentum. Whereas previous years, Wales are savvy enough and smart enough to know how to try and close games out. But you almost think because you have such a big lead, not intentionally, but then sometimes you can just sit off, or you think that this game's in the bag. And Australia, to then be able to come back and finish their campaign, which they've had a real tough Autumn Nation series, for them to do that against Wales at home at the Principality, which is one of the toughest places to go and play, and to have their backs up against the wall, I think it's an incredible result for Australia, but disappointing from Wales that they weren't able to close that out.
The comments were harsh. Ollie Howe says, bye-bye, Wayne. Mr. Sweetman, wasn't that Australia's C team as well? Leighton says, nothing to be ashamed of. Few silly mistakes. Gareth Anscombe going off changed the game. Australia were rubbish. Wales gave it to them. Again, I think we're going to be talking about Wales and what happens next with them during our reviews. And let's move on, continuing on the theme of the autumn internationals. We've got another Agony Uncle feature and question for Alex Goode. We call this feature, if you've missed it before, Ask Alex. And this question comes from Peter in Bristol.
Question for Goody. If the autumn internationals were decided ancient Greek style by sending out their best warrior, hardest lad, who would each nation nominate and who'd win?
Excellent question.
France. We'll start there. We'll go out there first. We'll go Six Nations. Paul Willemse, the second row, he's just so big. Trying to beat him in any kind of wrestle fight would be so hard once he gets onto you. So he'd be their sort of warrior. Very French name as well. England, I think you just have to go for Genji. He wants it the most. I think he's got the aggression in him. Ireland, either Porter or Bundyaki. I'm going to go Bundyaki.
Okay.
A lot of power there. Just off the back of a ban as well, so he's pent up, ready to go. Scotland's going to be Finn Russell. He's going to be the sort of just magician. He's going to blind them with something and then just be too quick for them. Wales, Faletau. I like Faletau. Again, just for different rangey. So the winner for me is going to be a close one between the sort of Mike Tyson Genge against the sort of Klitschko, which is Willemse, I think, and I'll give it to Genji. He'd be happy with that.
Yes. Yeah, I thought you were going to go that way as well. Appreciate it, Alex. Keep your questions coming in. Drop us a WhatsApp voice note. House of Rugby number, it's 0785 228 1348, and it is also in your podcast description, so check it out there and make sure you send us in those questions. Can be anything from rugby to your personal life. Anything you want, just ask Alex. So now class is in session. Okay, we're going to assess and mark the Autumn Nation series. We're going to give out report cards, of course, grades A to F. And we've got a bunch to get through, so we're going to do quick fire questions and answers, maybe a little bit more focus on England and Wales, like we pointed out. But we're going to get a key point for each team. We're going to take that home to mum and dad, all right, in our report card. So let's start with our Six Nations teams. England, a defeat to Argentina. They beat Japan. Drew with New Zealand with that fantastic comeback in the final 10 minutes, but then beaten, as we mentioned, against South Africa last weekend. What grade do you give England for their autumn, Rachael?
A C, because I think we saw glimpses of some good moments, but there's a lot of work to do.
I'd love it if you were my teacher. C, yeah? Okay, Alex?
I'd gone a bit lower than that. I'd gone D just because I just think there haven't been enough progression throughout the thing. I think that against Argentina, I actually think they were that bad at all. I just think Argentina were clinical. We shouldn't lose at home. But I think for me, against New Zealand and South Africa, just didn't play very well at all at home. It is disappointed, I think, especially to finish like that. So, yeah.
I'd maybe give a D-, but I did say I'd come with something positive to say, Alex. And I have something positive to give you. There's going to be a review from the RFU Council into England's really disappointing autumn. Good news for everyone. They might make a decision. No, we all know they're not going to, so what's the point? But anyway, Chief Executive Bill Sweeney said, despite strong individual performances and some great new talent coming through, the overall results are not where we expect them to be. He also gave thanks to those England fans I mentioned for their patience and support. What happens with this review then, Alex?
Well, look, I think first and foremost, I don't like seeing England do badly. I don't any of us want England to do badly. We want England to be successful, to do well. And I think Eddie Jones tactically is a good coach, which may confuse people a bit. I just think at the moment, this year, it has been very disappointing. I think it's 5 wins from 12 or 13 games. And we want to build into the World Cup, and we're just not seeing that progression in a sense. Now, do I think Eddie's the right man? Yes, I do. I think this close to it, I think he's the right man to take them to the World Cup, 100%. I think there's a core group of players who are extremely good for England. I just worry that we're not seeing them get any better or improving. And we've seen teams like South Africa, France, Ireland, particularly looking very good. And even New Zealand are starting to go on the way up. So it worries me in that sense. For the review, I don't see anything changing, and I don't think it should do this close. It would be very hard for anyone to come in and do anything. So I don't see the benefit of that. I just think that it's important to make sure that everyone knows he's accountable. You know, that's the role of being the head coach. And hopefully in that review, some of the questions that Rachael mentioned about him explaining why he was at fault come out to them. It doesn't have to come out to everyone in the world, but at least people who are in the know get a clear idea. So, look, I don't see the review changing much, but then again, I still think Eddie's the right person going into the World Cup, and I think he showed in the last World Cup, you know, in the big games, he can be tactically very good, and hopefully we can harness that for that World Cup coming up.
Okay, let's move to Ireland next. 3 wins out of 3. A 3-point victory over South Africa and Australia. In the middle of that, they beat Fiji as well. You've got to give them a top grade, surely, Rach?
Yeah, I think so. I think they're looking really good. They're looking really strong. I'm definitely going to give them an A, not an A star, because there's always still bits they can improve on. But I think just how they've gone about their business this autumn, they've had a couple of tight wins, found a way to win against those teams, but still look comfortable and in control. And then a good result against Fiji, who are always a challenging side to play against.
I'll go B+ purely because they weren't great against Fiji. And I think Andy Farrell came out and said that they struggled past Australia, but they did beat South Africa. So B+ for me, and Six Nations, I'm sure they'll get better.
Scotland next. Defeat to Australia. They had a win over Fiji and Argentina, lost to New Zealand as well. Yeah, I mean, are they going somewhere under Gregor Townsend, I guess? How did you view their autumn, Rach?
Yeah, I think a bit of a mixed bag. Again, we've not really seen full consistency from them, but, you know, the inclusion of having Finn Russell back, which was a massive talking point about what he can do and how, you know, I think he's a key man for that side in order for them to progress.
I would give them, I'd go on C+. I think the loss to Australia was disappointing, but as soon as they had Finn, they're like a B+ team. You know, they've beaten Argentina there, they've looked good, and they got better throughout the autumn, so on the way up.
To Wales then, bit of a disaster for them this autumn. 3 defeats. New Zealand, Australia, you'd expect. The defeat to Georgia was a huge shock. A win over Argentina, a positive for them. Not a bad side, of course, after their win over England, that was as well. So they were in good form, they were confident, they were beaten by the Welsh. What score do you give them, Rachael?
Is E too harsh?
No?
I just think it's been quite a letdown. You know, I guess the last game kind of gave a glimmer of hope, but I just think it's been really disappointing.
I don't want to be. I don't know if there's anything you can say that's going to go down well in this next bit about Wales. So I'll let Rachael take the E.
So you're saying F?
I've not said anything.
E as well.
Don't even put me on the same bracket here. I'm just staying out of this one.
Alex told me to say E.
I didn't. I told you to say F actually, but no. I think Wales will be bitterly disappointed. The Georgia result was a very low point for them, and then the Australia game. I mean, being quite honest about it, that's not Australia's first team, not even second team, really. It's no disrespect to those guys. They fought unbelievably hard, and it's a great result for Australia. But Wales at home with that lead, it's tough to take, and Welsh fans are not happy. So it'll be really interesting to see what happens over the next coming weeks as to which direction they go. But yeah, not a good autumn for Wales. So I'll go with Rachel's mark on that.
Those of us that have received U's during our education as younger men then understand what Wales should have really got for this autumn, because it wasn't good enough. Okay, it wasn't good enough. That's all I'm going to say. France, one of the best teams in the world, as we'd expect, beat Australia by a single point, 4-point win over South Africa, victory over Japan as well. Solid grade for them, Rach?
Yeah, I think France have been good, but I don't think they've been at their best. So for me, I'm going to give them a B. I think, yes, they've had a strong autumn. However, they weren't the team that everyone's kind of looking in awe and worried about. So much so, I think they've had a couple of really strong wins, like just to grind them out. The South Africa win and the Australia win. So yeah, a solid B.
Yeah, ultimately I give a B+, similar to what Rachael said. I don't think they hit their straps at all, but they ground out results when previous French teams wouldn't have done that. Against Australia and South Africa, they had to really dig in and come back and win it and show good composure late on. So I was impressed with that, but yeah, not hitting their straps yet. I think Jalabert is key for them. I think he has to start. He made a difference every time he came on.
Italy had a big win over Samoa, a 1-point victory over Australia, great for them, beaten heavily by South Africa, conceding 63 points. How do you think they did, Rach?
I thought they did really well. I think they've shown some of their character over the autumn internationals. 2 really big wins for them. Been on the cusp a number of times, and I think deserve to get a good C.
C. Wow, very
or
different.
B. Well, I didn't know. Is B+ better than a B? I didn't really get it.
No, it's all right. You say with C. I've gone A. I've gone A, maybe.
Oh, wow.
I think...
Fair play.
I just think the progression... They beat Wales in the Six Nations. They've then backed it up by beating Samoa and then beating Australia, where they looked really, really good. And look, South Africa are a good side. They're playing very well. But I think the progression for Italy was really impressive. So maybe an A-, being too generous. But I just think, like, under the new coach, Kieran Crowley, or he's been there a while, but they've really gone forward. So I like what I saw in the autumn.
Okay, let's very quickly give our grades, just our grades, to the tourists. South Africa, a defeat to Ireland and France. They beat Italy and England.
B.
I've changed my mind as this podcast has gone on. I'll say B+. Mainly because, quickly on that, the way they play against France with 14 men was very impressive, and I still think they're favourites for the World Cup. There we go.
New Zealand, 3 wins over Japan, Wales and Scotland. A draw, of course, with England when they led healthily with 10 minutes to go.
B.
B.
Australia, a win, 3 defeats to France, Italy and Ireland, and then that victory over Wales.
C.
C.
And finally, we get to Argentina, who, of course, beat England. Fantastic result for them, but then defeats to Wales and Scotland.
C.
C+. Great result against England, but then probably disappointed with how it went after that. And for me, top bracket, you've got France, Ireland, South Africa. You've got then New Zealand, who are capable of a one-off performance. and then it's England, Argentina, Scotland, and Australia in that rung below.
Okay, that's it. We've come to our collective consensus. The results have been finalised. Huge Six Nations to come. Then we have the World Cup. Yes, World Cup year lies ahead in the coming months for these teams. We'll see who improves going into that competition. Fingers crossed for us England fans. They can make a huge leap, okay, because we cannot wait for that tournament, but we really, of course, want to put our best foot forward. Okay, time for our big interview of the week. Alex was able to sit down with the legend that is the former South Africa captain, John Smit.
John Smit, 111 caps, World Cup winner, and the British Lions winner as captain. You've had a good week in England. Tough week, was it?
More like an endurance event. It was good though. Nice to be back. Haven't been able to travel for a long time, so having a week to catch up with friends and see people from London and around London. Fantastic. Energy of London's pretty cool, but you do get some fatigue after a week. I was a lonely soul, quite ready for home that Sunday night, sitting for 4.5 hours in Terminal 5. So the flight couldn't have come fast enough.
I bet. And let's focus on that before we get to international rugby and how good South Africa are. Your time at Saracens, a couple of years at the club. What do you remember of it? What did you really enjoy about it?
I think the thing that stands out, Goode, is when I got the call from Ed Griffiths to think about coming to Saracens after the 2011 World Cup. I was pretty done. I'd just been sort of doing what I was doing for a long time, captaining for a long time, and that 2011 World Cup exit was, probably is still one of the only things I haven't really been able to digest. And at the time, I was keen to stop. So, as you well know, Ed Griffiths, the professor, is he can be quite convincing. And he said, "Look, just come, and your role won't be to start. It won't be to captain. You'll literally be there to sort of give Scala some time off and mentor Jamie and just work within the squad." And so I sort of saw it as like a full circle going back to how I started as a squad member. And he said, if you don't like it after 6 months, you can go back home. So I didn't really feel like I was responsible for anyone. I was just one of the crew. Tried my best to behave accordingly. Back in my early 20s, just part of the squad. So a pretty cool chapter for us.
And you said you love London, but what about the famous Saracens trips that we have? What was your favourite one of those?
Well, I remember them all, to be fair, Goody. They were special. And I'll never forget, and I'm sure you're with us, we went to Cape Town during a Heineken Cup weekend and we were playing Biarritz. I think it was Biarritz. And we had a pretty good week in Cape Town. There was a lot of razzle for a week before a Heineken Cup game, and we flew back the Thursday, got back the Friday, played the Saturday. And I think I was captain. I was captain at half time, but I remember saying to the guys, this is an extremely important game to win. Otherwise, the dream of the away trip and of Saracens trip dies. I think that's probably my most rousing Braveheart speech, because we won the game and the trips continued. But it was Barcelona, Cape Town, Verbier. You rattle off these names and you just realize how privileged we were. You also realize why so many were jealous of what we were able to do and how we played while doing it.
Yeah, and pretty unique. I mean, you speak to other clubs, they seem to do things a bit now, but you'd never experienced that in sort of club rugby ever before, right?
No, I'd never experienced anything like Saracens before. And, I don't even think it's the kind of thing you can copy and paste. I think it was just a unique time with a group of people, and it's just a unique environment that was created. It'll be hard to replicate anywhere else, I think. But yeah, privileged to have played a very, very small part in that for 2 seasons. But I had a huge amount of fun.
And moving on to international rugby, and you being captain of that World Cup winning 2007 squad. You lost a few games in the autumn the year before, I think 2 out of the 3, and yet you came through and were so strong throughout the tournament and looked magnificent, really, and took the trophy comfortably, really. How did you turn it around from losing a few in the autumn to sort of, I say turn it around, but keep the flow and the team in the right direction and come through so well?
It was actually worse than that. The year before, we lost 6 on the trot, 6 test matches on the trot, and So I think that the only reason we survived that is because our last test match was against the All Blacks in the Royal Bafokeng Stadium, and we got a penalty in the last minute to kick 3 points to win the test match, to stop the 6 sort of losses in a row. I reckon had we lost that game, I don't think we would have survived. Certainly Jake and I wouldn't have survived. But I think that the biggest thing that made the difference was that we had a huge belief in what the team could do, and we had a huge belief in our coach. At the time, Jake had instilled a plan that we believed in, and we believed in him, and he certainly believed in us. He backed us to the hilt. We were quite resilient by 2007 with all our big boys back and a starting lineup and a game plan that was pretty much set stone. A lot of stars aligned for that to happen, because it could very well have gone another way had our board changed and changed everything up a year before.
The same with this current South African side. They obviously had the 2 losses at the start of the autumn, and then they came through really well against Italy, and then won again against England so impressively. What was so impressive for you in that game against England?
As a tour as a whole, I think the England sort of result gave them a sort of pass mark. What you didn't want is to go on that tour, lose all 4 and get smashed. And so sort of 2 out of 4 in 2 really good performances, and obviously the ending against England, I guess it's sort of given them a pass mark. This team is proper though. I can't remember when last we had such a long run of consistent performances. A team that's able to win as much as these guys, and no matter the sort of circumstance, they always seem to be able to put something together. They love the pressure. They love being in the corner, and they love when things aren't that smooth. And invariably for a South African team, things are never smooth.
And is that sort of a trademark of Rassie? He likes to have a fight the whole time. He wants his team to be up against it, backs against the wall, the world's against us, fighting in that sense.
Without that, I think, but Rassie's not alone. I think that's certainly been a sort of a mantra. Or South Africa has never been great as the favourites. They love the underdog tag, and they love they love people talking before a test match. And so, I mean, you would have noticed, even, and again, a coach of ours, Eddie's always quite vocal before test matches, but not that much for South Africa, because I think he's been inside that camp to realise you don't really want to throw too much fuel on the fire as it is, and you just sort of, you want South Africa to go in there sort of not as pumped as they would normally be. But Rassie's been a genius at how he's been able to extract the best out of the squad. One has to think about what he did in 18 months with this team that was ranked 7th, and then from there to win a World Cup. And I'm still fortunate to be amongst those guys. They have an unbelievable belief in him and what he does and what he says. So the thing that I look at as an ex-player, and I think that's all of us as ex-players, all you want to see is the guy in that jersey before you putting in a massive effort. And I can't say that since 2018, since Rassie's taken over, that I've ever seen a team that's been lackadaisical or just off the pace or shoulders down. These guys, they fight pretty much every weekend. They don't win every weekend, but they win more than they lose. So that's sort of what stands out for me in this sort of Rassie era.
And dare I ask about Rassie and these tweets and everything, where you stand? Are you with everyone in South Africa who loves him no matter what he does, or are you wary of how the impact it has?
The thing I think is that Rassie, it's irrelevant around whether or not what he's showing you is correct or incorrect. I mean, I think you look at the clips and they don't look great, but we shouldn't be seeing those clips. Those clips should be directed at World Rugby, and they should be directed at the referees, and they should be done at a certain platform. And I think it's probably driven by the fact that Rassie and that coaching group don't think that they have been heard enough, and a couple of things that they'd like to change. And it's caused a lot of turmoil. I don't think it's sort of been in the ethos of the game, but it certainly has resonated with a lot of coaches that would like things to change from how they are enabled to interact with referees. And the other thing around this is that we also don't want to chase referees away. We need good people to want to referee games, and it's a bloody tough game to referee. So, that Goody, the point, I think the bottom line is, you asked me what camp I'm in. I'm in the camp where we have got probably a number of parties, players, coaches, World Rugby, referees, or everyone that's in charge or plays a role in the game. And everyone's guilty of something in this whole process. And that's why it's such a difficult thing. That's why I don't actually think there can be two camps. I think what we need is dialogue in the right format that gets communicated accurately to the public around what is being done by the leadership of rugby in the world to alleviate fans' frustration. That's where I think that's the camp I stand in.
Superb. Well, I'll quickly do a few quick fire questions just to finish it off. So, who's got the best chance out of the South African teams in the Champions Cup?
I think that this year's best candidates will probably be the Bulls. And the reason I say it is because they got the least amount of Springboks, so they sort of and they got the sort of biggest all-round depth around their squads there. So least interruptions from an international player's point of view, and well coached by Jake, who's just found another groove with this group of players and created something quite special. And we certainly can't throw away the Stormers who won it the last time round. But I guess if I had to put my money on a South African franchise to go the distance, it'd probably be the Bulls.
Fair enough. Biggest threat to South Africa? If I say South Africa are favourites for the World Cup, biggest threat to South Africa?
The Rugby World Cup draw was done so early that the current world rankings, the top four will meet each other in the quarterfinal, which means that two of the top four teams will be out in the quarterfinal. So by the looks of it, we're going to have to either beat New Zealand or France at home to get through a quarterfinal, and I think that will be the biggest hurdle that we face. We get through that, I think that'll be a bigger challenge to get through than the final.
Most important South African player for the World Cup?
I don't know if I, as a pundit, can name one. If I was pushed into a corner, it would have to be the hooker, Goody.
Yes, great answer. Toughest opponent you played against?
Mate, I was lucky or unlucky, but I was the same vintage as Kevin Mialamu, and so playing hooker against each other for the better part of a decade, both at Super Rugby and internationals. He was just an absolute gentleman off the field, absolute tough nut to crack on the field. And you get off the field and he's the soft-spoken, absolute gentleman. I mean, he's currently standing for his community as a political leader within Auckland. So, quality human being.
John, really appreciate you giving us the time. And also what I've taken from this is that England have a great chance for the World Cup because the autumn doesn't mean too much and you can come back from that. All the best with it. You're getting on with John and work back at home. And thanks so much for joining us.
Okay, it's time for Pass It On now on House of Rugby. Rachael, tell us more.
Well, each week we want to spread the love and get your shout outs for the people that are giving their time and their experiences back to grassroots rugby and their community. And this week's Pass It On comes from Neil at Old Streetonians.
Hi, I'm Neil. I play for Old Streetonians in East London, and I want to pass it on to Rick and Lynn Hay. They're great because they started the club just over 30 years ago. They're there every single week and they do so much of the work that people don't see. That allows us to play every single week. We get 3 sides out playing a really good and social level of rugby. They're really the heartbeat of the club. So thank you very much, Rick and Lynn.
You can also pass it on to your local hero. Just drop a voice note on the House of Rugby burner phone number and we will play it out on the show.
Okay, big thanks to Rachael and Alex. Alex, what's your plans for the coming week? Back out there training?
Yeah, back in the training and then preparing for Europe in December. So big time of year for the team and excited for it.
Yeah, can't wait. Of course, we'll have all the build-up and reaction throughout the first couple of games in the Champions Cup. And we will be back, as always, next week to chat all things rugby. Remember to take a look in the description for our number. Drop us a line. Ask Alex a question. Give us your feedback at House of Rugby as well online. And we will see you very soon.